Hi, I'm Jennifer Sir. Welcome to the Sewing Room and our Jobs in Fashion series. Today we're speaking with Kasia Kappes, who is a paralegal at Levi's. And I think we're in for a really juicy conversation about what it's like to be a paralegal for a fashion company. So here we go. Here's my interview with Kasia.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. Um, can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you became a paralegal at Levi's?
Oh, yes. Okay, so I've been a paralegal 18 years. Uh, um, Probably some 2006. I mostly have worked in law firms, and I've only had two in-house stints, which means working for an outside company. And the Levi's job is something that I had always wanted to work at. My last law firm I was at, they were a client of theirs, and Levi's is, the oldest, most iconic company in San Francisco. And I thought, how amazing would it be to work there? And yeah, right before I was laid off from Lyft, a position came open, and um, I applied and I got it, and it was really, really exciting, because I love Levi's.
That's awesome. What kind of education or training did you have to become a paralegal?
I have a BA, a bachelor's in criminal justice from SF State, and then I went and got a paralegal certificate. So yeah, in order to become a paralegal, you either need to go to paralegal school or have worked in a law firm um, for a long period of time. I believe in like a secretary role, and some people did get grandfathered into that position, but I went to school for
Cool. Can you tell me a little bit about the criminal justice part of your background? I had no
it.
idea.
I know it's an interesting one. Um, I don't even know how I fell into that. When I was still living in LA, which is where I grew up, and I went to Pasadena City College for many years because I was working full time. Before I moved up here, I started taking what they called administrative justice classes. And I took one, and I don't even remember what the curriculum was, but I did do a paper on female serial killers. And I got, like, our teacher took us on a tour of a jail. And it was just weird stuff to me. I'm like, that's a whole other world that I've never been a part of. And it was really interesting to learn about it. And so when I was at SF State, I originally was a math major, but calculus kicked my butt. So I had been taking criminal justice classes as an elective, and I just loved the teacher. I loved learning about the different laws and different prison systems, and so I ended up changing my major, and it was just fascinating, really like really interesting to me. And so, and my goal, what my hopes was to actually become a probation officer, because I wanted to help people who were trying to get out of the system and help them potentially stay out of the system. Um, but yeah, no one, San Francisco was laying off probation officers when I left school. So I chose a different path.
Wow. What are the responsibilities and duties of a paralegal?
So our lives are geared around deadlines. Deadlines are what I live by. So I manage our trademarks and the maintenance and the filing of all of them. And so it comes with a lot of deadlines, and you got to make those deadlines or else you lose your trademarks. So it's a lot of just managing deadlines and filings, and also some clearance work, which means when other brands come to us and say, hey, I want to name these jeans this, we're going to put out this new product, we want to call it this. They give us a list of names and we check to see if anybody else is using them and basically what the risk level is for naming a product, because you don't want to name it something that someone else has named their product.
Right. So what is a trademark?
So a trademark is oh wow, I feel like I'm being tested.
I'm sorry. No, I just think it's really important, especially for
Yeah.
people in the fashion industry or who are interested in the fashion industry, to understand about this part of the fashion industry, the legal parts, the trademarks, the copyrights, all of that.
So trademark is a word, group of words, or a design that needs to be used on either goods or services. So, and this is used for marketing purposes, and so that you can, identify a word with a good or a service like jeans or lift for, catching a cab, so to speak. So, like for instance, our marks would be Levi's. Levi's is one of our biggest trademarks. We have it registered all over the world. 501 is a trademark. So if you hear 501, you know that's a Levi's jeans. Um, or the two horse patch. That is a trademark. The arcuate stitching on our jeans is trademark. So you can trademark a design as well, something that's a feature of your goods. Um, and then also, like for services, we sell these jeans under our name. So therefore, you'll have a services trademark. Um, Actually, it's called a service mark, and that basically lets everybody else know that we're selling jeans under the name of Levi's, and
Oh,
we have a
interesting.
logo and everything. So all of that stuff gets protected because you don't want other people using it, because then that just causes confusion. If you've got two different companies doing the same thing with the same name but they're not related, like that doesn't work for for people
Right.
and
And
for
Levi's
business,
is such
right?
a big brand. They're going to really want to make sure to protect all of those aspects
Oh
of the
yes.
designs.
Yes, which means we have a very large enforcement program.
Wow. What does enforcement look like?
It's so there's many different areas. On the trademark side, it is filing oppositions, which means we monitor what marks are being applied for. And there is a period during prosecution called the publication phase where it's put out into the public that someone has filed for these marks, and we kind of look at them and we see if there's anything similar to ours. We try to stop them from being able to get those trademarks because they're just too close to ours. So there's oppositions that's within, and cancellations. You can try to cancel someone's registration. There's also litigation. Sometimes it leads to litigation. Um, there's counterfeits that we worry about, um, which is also part of the enforcement program. And then just people trying to um, use our jeans to sell them on their own or use them for their own creations and then selling them. So yeah, there's different areas of enforcement, but it's basically trying to keep anything that's confusingly similar um, off of the register and keeping people from doing it and stealing your brand basically.
What's a typical workday look like for you?
I don't know if they're ever typical. I do have like a few tasks that I'm always doing on a regular basis, which is checking our deadlines, seeing if we have anything due, um, looking at watch notices at least once a week and reporting those out. Lots of meetings. Um, and then, yeah, just looking at my inbox and seeing what kind of requests that we get from people. I get requests from all over um, the world sometimes who need like a list of our trademarks or they need their registrations for various reasons. Um, it kind of just varies, but I mean, I have like weekly tasks that I stay on top of, and I make up projects for myself, which is basically right now I'm cleaning up our database, which is very not, it's very boring. Um, it's, it's just boring office stuff sometimes. Once in a while, it gets exciting.
Well, I think that's something to note, when you're thinking about a job, and and most of the time there's a lot of boring office stuff, and we don't necessarily realize that going into it, especially in this exciting world of fashion. But
Yeah.
I remember one of the biggest things that I did at Gap as a technical designer was organizing my filing and filing things in boxes or drawers or yeah.
Yes, yes, there is that. I have a pile of filing. Um, I mean, usually it's the meetings that are more exciting because that's when you learn about what's going on in the company,
Yeah.
what your bosses are working on, what they may need your help on. My day-to-day stuff is whatever. It's the projects that come along that can be exciting.
And being part of that
Yeah.
work environment, and
hmm
yeah.
hmm
Um, do you go into the office or do you work from home?
I go in 3 days a week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays, and work from home on Mondays and Fridays, and that's our current company policy.
How does working at Levi's differ from other companies you work for? So like working in the fashion industry versus working at a legal firm.
Well, when you're at a firm, you have many different clients that you work on. So there's a lot of variety, and it's not always in the same industry. I had some food clients, I had some semiconductor clients, I had tech clients. Um, so it kind of varies. But when you're in house, you're dealing with one brand, but different departments. Um, so it depends how much variety you want in your day. And that was actually one of my fears about going in-house. Is this going to be boring? Because I'm only dealing with jeans. Um, but luckily it has not been. Um, it's it's been fascinating. Like, one, I can understand jeans. I don't know what semiconductors are, so I don't want to go work for a company with semiconductors. But it's fun to learn about how things are being made, especially now that I'm taking sewing classes. So it kind of coincided when I started learning to sew working at Levi's. And so when people are talking about certain seams or designs on shirts and stuff, I'm like, oh, I know how they did that. So it's really, I can understand it. And
Hmm.
that's what's fun about it. Like, I know kind of what they're doing. Um, or, they put out a really cool shiny jacket, and I could not figure out how they got it to look that way. And so my boss took me down to the design team and found me someone and was like, how did you make this jacket? And it was like, that's
Oh,
so
that's so
fun.
cool. That's so
Yeah.
fun.
Can I work in this department? But that's the other thing. Like, I sit there and I'm like, what else can I do here? Um, can I be a tailor? Like, can I work in the archives? The archives is like
Oh,
one of the
wow.
coolest. It's like a mini museum,
That's so
like a
awesome.
Levi's museum. It's fascinating. So yeah, it can. Um,
There's lots of
I
opportunity, right? Like,
there. Yes, I think there is. I haven't quite been able to figure out, is there a way to get out of legal? I've just been stuck in legal for so long. But now being there, I'm like, are there other options for me here? So I haven't explored them by any means, but it's just exciting um, to know a little bit about sewing and working for a fashion company.
so, so when I was working at Gap, oftentimes people would come to me, people from within the company would come to me and ask me about my job. They'd do informational interviews and they'd find out more about the job, and because maybe they were interested in going from one department to another. So
hmm
that is one way you can meet other people, find out about other parts of the organization and what you need to know in order to,
hmm
you know, to move to move over to a different department if you ever considered that.
When you were at Gap, when these people were asking these questions, were they people who had gone to school for fashion and or did they all have varying backgrounds?
They all had varying backgrounds. So, like even people in our merchandising department, which you think merchandisers, you can go to school for merchandising, but most of those people went to like Ivy League colleges and they might have studied business or they might have studied English
Oh.
literature and they ended up somehow um, in the merchandising department, which I found really fascinating. So in my department, which was technical design, almost all of us went to design school and understood the technical aspects of sewing and garment production and how that happens. So it was really fascinating to me to talk to people from other departments
Mhm.
who
Mhm.
were interested in what I did and what my job was, and could they, was that something that they could do, um, or was there an aspect of it that they could participate in some way. So,
Mhm.
and I think within large companies like that, there is more opportunity. Like I remember there were a lot of opportunities for people to move between my department and the production department, especially if you were interested in learning how to do learning more about how everything is done and then going out into the field and experiencing it that way. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
Wow. I mean, I love my bosses so much. I can't imagine not working with them, but I do think about like, what else could I do here?
Yeah.
And people do move around and change jobs,
Yeah.
which
But even
doesn't
the
always
ones
happen in a law firm. So,
but also maybe you don't even have to change jobs. Maybe you can just find out more about what other people do just for your
mhm.
own knowledge, and that makes you a better employee, I think, is when you understand what the bigger picture is and all the different
Oh,
people
definitely.
involved.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like just learning production times.
Yeah.
That that's like a whole a whole area that is just like so interesting.
Yeah.
Which does tie into my job when I'm doing clearance work. They'll be like, "This is for fall of 2025." And I'm like, "Really?
Right
That
now?
far out?"
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that far out?
Like, 'cause and
Yeah.
then I learn, like, things just take a lot of time and we're not considered fast fashion.
Mm-mm.
And so it is a lot slower, and I'm like, "Oh, they
Yeah.
have to really think ahead."
Yeah.
Yeah, I love learning, like, little aspects of that stuff.
Me too. I do too.
Yeah.
What are the benefits of working for a fashion company versus a typical legal
Mm.
office?
Sample sales. All the fun clothes, the discounts, um, you I mean, in general, for just being in-house, you're gonna learn so much more than and you get to know all the exciting stuff before your law firm does. I mean, I still work with a law firm on the outside, um, but, you just have more insight into what's going on in the company. It's actually given me a really great perspective of how a client works,
Mhm.
um, and how they interact with their law firm. Because I was always on the law firm side, and you don't know how decisions are being made with your client, and so
Mhm.
you have to sit and wait for them. But now being in house, I'm like, this is how it works. This is really interesting.
Mhm.
But specifically for fashion, one, I just enjoy being around clothes and fashion, and but yeah, those sample sales.
What about the hours that you work? Like, is that different? Is it more intense?
No, um, it's pretty flexible. I had a really great flexible schedule with my law firm as well. And it's the same at Levi's. You know, if I need to, I can start at 10 a.m. or I start at 8 a.m. if I have an early meeting, or sometimes 7 a.m. It's very flexible. Um, and so yeah, but so far I haven't had like a ton of overtime either. So that's great. That's one big difference. You're not doing as much
Um,
overtime as you are in a law firm.
so as a paralegal, what are the benefits of being a paralegal versus being an attorney?
um, well, as a paralegal, you always work under an attorney, um, which I do prefer because attorneys technically, um, they have more of not the burden, but they're more responsible. Like they're the responsible one, right? For everything that kind of happens in the legal team and with their employees and people who work under them. Um, I don't want that responsibility.
Mhm.
And it's a lot more work with an attorney. Like I
Right.
I thought about it for about 5 minutes. But if someone is interested in becoming an attorney, I will say one of the best things you can do is work as a secretary or paralegal first
Mhm.
in a legal setting to see if you want to become an attorney. And I learned I did not. I like being a paralegal.
Awesome. And um, finally, do you have any advice for people who are interested in working as a paralegal in the fashion space?
The one thing I find important to myself was being able to be behind the brand you want to work for.
Mhm.
I love Levi's. I've been wearing them forever. I knew like if I love a brand, then I'm going to feel really proud taking care of my job and doing it right and taking care of the company and the brand. I mean, if you don't like the brand, then you're just not going to enjoy the work, I think. But you also don't need a fashion background to go work in the legal department at any of these. So, but if you're interested in it, I would highly recommend trying to get into. It's fascinating. Also, one big difference between working in-house and a law firm, I don't have to bill my hours anymore.
Oh, that's great. That's
Yes,
that's
neither
probably a
do the
huge
attorney. It's
relief that you don't. Yeah.
yes, it's the stress level is just completely different. But yeah, not keeping track of your time and because I still do in my mind because I look at a task in terms of point one, which is how you used to bill. Like I think point one was like 6 minutes or something like that.
Oh
So I think
wow.
about everything in 6 minute increments. Like this took me a point five. Um, and so
Wow.
you start thinking that way in a law firm, but in-house you don't have to. Like your time is yours, and you can figure out how long something's going to take you or not, and
Mhm.
that is very freeing and far less stressful than being in a law firm.
That sounds awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on and talking with us today,
Of
Kasia.
course. Thanks for having me. This is fun.
That was a great interview with Kasia about being a paralegal at Levi's. I learned so much about what her job is actually like, and I find it so fascinating the differences between working for a fashion company versus a law firm. There is definitely a need for people in the legal area and legal realm to be working in a fashion company. There's so many different things that you have to think about and consider um, legality wise while having a fashion brand. Kasia talked to us a little bit about trademarks and what that's all about and the different things that she does in her daily job. There are plenty of benefits to working for a fashion company. Like Kasia said, there's always sample sales. And I remember we had that at Gap too, and it was super fun. Um, if you like this video, please give us a thumbs up and hit subscribe. It really helps us out. And if you're interested in learning more about the fashion industry, about the different jobs in fashion, we have a great freebie on our website if you want to sign up with your email. It's a jobs in fashion guide, and it gives you a little description about many jobs that are available in the fashion industry. Until next time, happy fashion, everyone.